So this video is really for the astrological apprentices, especially the year 2 apprentices who are now in the middle of their summer practicum. And what they're up to is working on 3 different charts, 3 different ascendants, each one of them, going through each house and going through each planet using the techniques, the ideas that we've covered in year 1 and also in the year 2 Shadbala course. The reason I wanted to do this video was to help give them a little bit more instruction and direction as they proceed, but I also figured it might be interesting to share it with you all on the Ryan's Vedic Astrology channel, the Asheville Vedic Astrology channel, because it can give you some insights into how to understand a chart as well. So first of all, again, what we need to remember is that what these apprentices are doing, they all have to write papers. They're all writing at least 2 papers per course. There are 3 courses per year. We have a little bit of a break for the summer. And during this time, they're applying everything they've learned from the Rashis and Signs class, the Bhavas and Houses class, the Planets and Grahas class, and the Shadbala course. That covers all of year 1 and then the first course of year 2 of the 4 to 5 year apprenticeship program. And within this course, we've looked at the qualities of the signs, we've looked at the qualities of the houses, the qualities of the planets in detail. We've looked at specific techniques utilized to understand how to qualify these things, such as Rashi aspects for the signs, such as planetary aspects, as we look at the Virupas, the aspectual points between planets. In Parashara, there are indications about how to see the annihilation or prosperity of a house and a sign. We've used that. We've also gone into the use of Ishta and Kashta. The Vargas, the divisional charts, just briefly, not too much. We did do a separate series on that, so some of them took that. We've looked at the Avashtas, such as the Baladi Avashtas, and touched upon the Jagradati Avashtas. And they have a 15-step procedure that they're going through. And then when we tie in Shadbala, well, that's a whole other ball of wax, because we spent over 20 hours, I think, just looking at the individual calculations of Shadbala and what it can tell about a planet individually. But anyway, back to the point. The goal of this practicum is to encourage students to write an extensive paper looking at each house, each planet, each house lord, even the Bhava Yogas we looked into, and to assess each one of those things, to find out where is the confluence that tells the story of the chart. And many of you have taken other classes with me, not just the apprenticeship course, but maybe the step-by-step downloadable course or the Vimshotari Dasha course. The most important place to start is always the ascendant and with the ascendant lord, because everything else is based off of that ascendant degree. All the other houses, how the signs lay over the houses and so on, all of them are in reference to that ascendant degree. So the ascendant and the ascendant lord is going to tell you in the very beginning what kind of person, what kind of chart we're talking about. And then everything that you discover from that point forward adds more detail to what you learned about the ascendant and the ascendant lord, such as what is the sign of the ascendant. That's going to color the person's life path and even potentially get into their personality, although you might often find that the moon sign is more of a personality based trait, but it all ties together. But the sign will tell you a lot about the person's path and direction in life, and how all the other signs lay out through the other houses will color in the specific areas of a person's life. What is the field in which that area of life is going to grow? So you have to start there. And then you do the exact same function, looking at the house lord, where is it placed? What is the sign? What planets are Rashi aspecting that sign? What planets potentially are planetarily aspecting the ascendant lord or the ascendant degree? Because planetary aspects are degree-based, right? They're based on degrees. So you don't have planetary aspects to signs or houses. You have them to degrees, so it would be towards a cusp. But you do have Rashi aspects to a Rashi, which is a sign. Makes sense. So you start there and then you build up. So by the time you get done, as I've always done when I do charts, is you've spent hours looking at the first house lore, and all these other things that we've considered. Then you go look at the second house, you do the same thing. Third house, do the same thing. And then as you contemplate the bhava yogas and so on, you'll start to see patterns emerging. Maybe you see from 5 different angles that a person has arguments with their siblings, with their brothers. Well, that's something you can say to an individual, and you'll probably be fairly accurate. Maybe you see that a person has different karmas. Some aspects of the chart show a person having great wealth from different sources. Other aspects of the chart say there will be lack and difficulty financially. So that's conflicting input. So once you get done looking at all the houses, all of the signs, going from 1 through 12, then you can start to assess the fact that, well, this is going to be what they call a middling experience. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work. So when you're thinking about this, this is how you have to start reading a chart, and this is how you have to start this particular project, those of you who are the apprentices participating in this project. And this is not the time to be looking into dashas, right? We are looking for the static promise of the chart. And what does that mean? We're just seeing what is the blueprint of this person. We're not putting it into time. We're not putting it into the 4th dimension yet. We still are just looking at the depth, length, and so on, looking at the 1, 2, and 3 dimensions of the person. So you can't look at dashas until you can read the initial chart. You can't look at transits until you can read the initial chart. Because those of you that know, sometimes someone predicts, they say, oh, well, look in the sky, there are these things going on, and yet that never happens to you. Why? Because it's not in your birth chart. It's not in your blueprint. Whereas other people, that happens every single time Mercury goes retrograde, or every single time Saturn goes retrograde, or every single time Jupiter goes into the sign of its enemy. This person has problems with wealth and so on, or problems with their children. But again, you don't, because your chart doesn't reflect that. So we have to remember that before we can look at transits, before we can look at dashas, we have to read the chart statically first, and that requires that we look at each house, each sign, each planet individually, taking notes, spending the long hours writing that stuff out. And then by the time we get done, there will be patterns, themes that repeat themselves. And those themes that we see from all these different 12 angles and the 9 angles of the planets and so on, that's what's going to tell us how much more certainty there might be to speak to a given experience for an individual. Because that habit, that theme, that pattern is there within their blueprint, within their birth chart. So you have to start there. So again, those of you in the apprenticeship program, do not think, and most of you know this, but I just want to clarify, that you're not going to start looking at the 10th house and 10th house lord and therefore be able to tell everything about a person's career. That's a good start, but you have to read the rest of the chart first to see how do all the different intricacies interweave and create patterns and themes. So start with the ascendant lord. Start with the ascendant sign. Apply all the techniques that you know to that first to see what is the general direction force that this person has as their blueprint. It's the foundation. And then everything you learn about the second house, you tie back to that. Everything you learn about the third house, you tie back to that. And finally you'll get to the 10th house and you tie back to that. But now you've got all these other patterns that you've looked at, 9 other patterns that you've looked at until you've gotten to the 10th house, which will have themes and threads and patterns that will make it more easy for you to say, oh, now I'm at the 10th house. And now I can see just how they're going to interact with certain situations, how they're going to behave when certain stresses come upon them. And once I know how to read transits and dashas, I can know when those things are going to express themselves. And that's the very important thing to remember, is that just because something's in your chart doesn't mean it's going to happen. Maybe a transit never comes along that triggers it. Maybe a dasha, maybe you don't see the dasha. Maybe that dasha happened when you were 2 years old, and you don't remember any of that anyway. So you have to start with the static influence first. And from there, You can take it into dashas, you can take it into transits, but right now, start the first house Lord, look at all those things we've covered in the apprenticeship program. Or those of you who have not taken the apprenticeship program, get the Art and Science of Vedic Astrology Volume 2 and read the step-by-step procedures in the appendix, or get the downloadable course, the step-by-step astrology course at AshevilleVedicAstrology.com, and learn those steps and apply them. First house, second house, third house, fourth house, and so on, all the way to the 12th. And by the time you get into that 12th house, then sit back, breathe, go for a walk, meditate, and then look at the chart again and see what themes and patterns are there that are crystal clear in your awareness from all of that research and study that you've done. Those are going to be the main things that you want to pay attention to.